Apparently, the Anglican Church in North America isn't Anglican, the Lutheran Brethren aren't Lutheran, Reformed Baptists aren't Reformed, and not all Orthodox are Orthodox. What's going on? Well, that's the claim of some in each of these traditions. Let's dig a little deeper into that idea. You've probably heard people say before that Mormons aren't Christian. Meanwhile, Mormons say that they are. I discussed this in my video, Are Mormons, Muslims, and Catholics Christian? In the case of all three of these groups, it comes down to there being differing definitions of who a Christian is. And the same thing can play out in these denominational families too. One reason that people will say that a denomination within their tradition doesn't deserve the name is because of theological liberalism. Theologically liberal denominations often stop requiring ministers in their churches to believe things that were required back when the denomination formed. For example, Lutherans in theologically liberal denominations don't have to agree with or teach what the Book of Concord says. Thus, the Lutheran denominations that still adhere to the confessions may say that such denominations aren't Lutheran. In the United States, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is the largest Lutheran denomination, but here's what the second largest Lutheran denomination, the Conservative Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, says on their website about the ELCA. Not every denomination bearing the name Lutheran is actually Lutheran. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, ELCA, is the largest church body in North America with Lutheran in its name. As such, many people consider the ELCA a representative example of Lutheran doctrine and teaching. Do its teachings bear this out? The ELCA both avoids saying that Scripture is inerrant and emphasizes the historical nature of the Lutheran confessions. That is, it only holds to those parts of the Lutheran confessions it finds to be in agreement with Scripture. The ELCA practices fellowship with those who deny Christ's real presence in the Lord's Supper. Women, along with practicing homosexual and transgender people, can be ordained into the office of the ministry. Lutheran doctrine is simply one perspective among many. Other teachings, even contradictory to the ELCA, are equally valid teachings of the Church. In other words, the LCMS doesn't view the ELCA as being truly Lutheran, and similar sentiments may be heard from conservative Baptist conventions that view the more liberal ones as not truly Baptist, and the same for Presbyterians, Mennonites, and others. But that's not the only reason somebody might say that a church doesn't belong. Let's take the case of the Reformed Baptists. This is a somewhat common controversy, and it can actually come from two places. First, Reformed with a capital R is actually a precise denominational category. Just like Methodist, Baptist, and Lutheran, there are churches that go by the name of Reformed. In the United States, two examples are the Reformed Church in America and the Christian Reformed Church in North America. The Reformed denominational family is also sometimes known as Continental Reformed, or named after the country it came from, with the RCA and CRCNA being examples of Dutch Reformed, and other options being Swiss Reformed or German Reformed, for example. Reformed churches look a lot like Presbyterians, and what makes things tricky is that Presbyterian denominations love to call their theology Reformed, but Reformed churches don't tend to accept being called capital P Presbyterian, even though they have lowercase p Presbyterian polity. Anyhow, what I'm trying to say is that in this sense, in the sense of the capital R Reformed denomination, Reformed Baptists are certainly not a part of it. Reformed churches in this sense have specific theology. The confessional documents associated with their tradition are called the Three Forms of Unity, the Belgic Confession, the Heidelberg Catechism, and the Canons of Dort. And the theology contained therein is Paedo-Baptist, not Credo-Baptist. But now, let's take the idea of Reformed theology. Presbyterians and Reformed churches claim this idea in common. The most well-known aspects of Reformed theology relate to the doctrines known by the TULIP acronym: total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints, along with the Calvinist view of predestination and a covenant theology hermeneutic of biblical interpretation. When Baptist churches claim to be Reformed Baptist, they're claiming solidarity with this set of theology, along with often also being confessional, holding to things like the 1689 London Baptist Confession. And such clarity is useful because there are many other Baptists who disagree with Calvinist theology and are rather Provisionist or Arminians. However, some in the Presbyterian and Reformed camps dislike the stripping of other Reformed distinctives from the term Reformed. They would say that to be Reformed means that one baptizes their children. That's an essential tenet, and to reject it is not Reformed. They may also add that the Presbyterian style of church government is Reformed, and Congregationalism, even if elder-run, is not Reformed. Well, that's the argument, and depending on how you answer it, will tell you if there can be such a thing as a Reformed Baptist. Now, what about the Anglicans? What does it mean to be Anglican? Originally, it meant to be part of the Church of England, but the Church of England expanded both due to emigration from England and also due to missionary activity. Anglicanism holds to an apostolic succession of bishops and a hierarchical church polity, so each Anglican denomination will have an archbishop at the top. As Anglicanism grew, in 1867 the first Lambeth Conference was held, and a communion called the Anglican Communion was formed. In this communion, archbishops of various national Anglican denominations are in communion with the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Church of England's archbishop, but sometimes things don't work out and denominations split. Take the Anglican Church in North America. It was formed mostly from churches that have been part of two denominations that are part of the Anglican Communion, the Episcopal Church, which is in the USA, and the Anglican Church of Canada. However, the ACNA itself, which formed in 2009, is not in communion with the Archbishop of Canterbury. It was in communion with other Anglican denominations, which were in communion with the Archbishop of Canterbury, but to some that's not good enough. So there are those who say that since the ACNA is not in communion in that way, they aren't really Anglican. However, it seems like this argument may begin to lose its effectiveness, seeing that as of early 2023, there are now a whole bunch of other Anglicans who have broken with the Archbishop of Canterbury. The ACNA is probably one of the biggest border cases since they are in communion with many global South Anglican denominations. Even more likely to be rejected as truly Anglican are some of the more fringe Anglican denominations like the Anglican Catholic Church and the Episcopal Free Communion. Let's go back to the Lutherans again though, because it's not just liberalism that may cause Lutherans to reject you as Lutheran. I made a video on the Church of the Lutheran Brethren in America, a Lutheran denomination which identifies itself within the Pietist tradition. Part of that is that they have this unique thing called confessing membership, which requires a person not simply to be baptized or confirmed, but also to affirm that they have personally put their faith in Jesus Christ, and their pietism has also caused them to become very low church and non-liturgical, and also open to premillennialism. One comment left on that video is, with all due respect, Pietists aren't Lutherans. One thing this does show is that for at least some of those Lutherans who like to maintain some level of exclusivity to the title, they aren't simply denying Lutheran status to liberal denominations. The Church of the Lutheran Brethren certainly can't be accused of being theologically liberal, but some of the staunch confessionalists would see them as being too freewheeling with the Lutheran tradition to deserve the title. Finally, we look into the realm of orthodoxy. What does it mean for a church to be part of the Orthodox Church? First, there are two main communions that claim this name, the Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox. Many priests, bishops, theologians, and laypersons from both sides have desired to see the two become one. There have been dialogues and theological discussions, but especially because of the same reasons they separated in the first place, they have not come back to communion with each other. For more on this, watch my video on Eastern Orthodox versus Oriental Orthodox. Especially from the Eastern Orthodox side, there have also been those who say that the Oriental Orthodox should not be called Orthodox at all. The community of Mount Athos has been one of the strongest voices denying the title of Orthodox to the Oriental Orthodox, saying, "We seek the swiftest possible reestablishment of the theological dialogue upon the right principles, so that the Orthodox will preserve for themselves the Orthodox faith unspoiled, but also for the non-Chalcedonians, so that they will have the possibility of return to the true Church of Christ from which they have been cut off for 15 centuries." However, even within the confines of so-called Eastern Orthodoxy, there are also contentious issues of who is Orthodox and who is not, like the case of the Old Calendarists. In the 1900s, Orthodox churches began to drop the use of the Julian calendar for many purposes and adopt the Gregorian calendar, and today for fixed feasts, most in Eastern Orthodox use the Gregorian calendar. Not all accepted this novelty, and in Greece, some bishops separated themselves from the rest of the church and took the name of the Church of True Orthodox Christians of Greece, while the outside termed them Old Calendarists. Among these, there have also been splinters. Some of the Old Calendarists view the New Calendar churches as not having valid sacraments, while others say they do. Today, there are groups of Old Calendarists in several countries. What all can agree on is that these churches are not in communion with the mainstream of Eastern Orthodoxy, but the question lies on whether they can be considered Orthodox at all. Bringing things closest to home, though, are the issues of churches that part of Eastern Orthodoxy views as part of the Orthodox Church, but another part of Eastern Orthodoxy is not in communion with. Possibly the highest profile issue here right now is in Ukraine, where the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, aka Ukrainian Orthodox Church, has been established and recognized by some, including the Ecumenical Patriarchate, while the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate exists in the same territory. The Moscow Patriarchate is disputably under the jurisdiction of the Russian Orthodox Church, but has universally been recognized as Orthodox. However, the newer Orthodox Church of Ukraine was formed by a merger of groups that were previously viewed as schismatic, and still today, many Eastern Orthodox churches have refused to recognize the church or enter communion with it. As Orthodox Church in America priest Zechariah Lynch writes, "At current, there is also a group that utilizes Orthodox forms but is not Orthodox in any meaningful sense of the word. This group is called the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, OCU. It is headed by a layman who goes by the name of Epiphany. This group was created by the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople out of a number of self-ordaining and schismatic groups." So what's the solution? In some of these cases, it may be those who deny the title to others are going too far, and perhaps in other cases, it's time for those denominations being challenged to choose a new name. But until either of these happen, it will be necessary to look more deeply into a church than just reading the church sign to find out who they really are.